Hello and welcome to OPA GCSE Sociology, and today we're going to be looking at what is a case study. So for your first task, don't worry about the do now. This is something we were doing in class. So we're going to move straight on to task one. So something to bear in mind before we jump into the definition, the term case studies comes from the medical research world. So when doctors come across a disease, they study and record its progress with a group of patients, including how well those patients respond to certain treatments. That's what a case study is. The same idea is used in sociology for a specific group in society or a topic area. So sociologists will resort to other studies to try and understand how certain groups respond to certain social situations. So just for task one now, we're going to get a definition down of what a case study is. So in sociology, a case study is an in-depth study of a particular element of society. So for example, it might be delinquent gangs in the southeast of England, or it might be schools in the northwest. It may be even as more specific, it might be looking at media representations of young people aged 18 to 24 in southwest London. It can be very niche. And they are generally qualitative, wanting to immerse themselves in that social world through detail. So generally want that interpretivist approach. That's generally some form of observation, interview. And they're not really worried about if it's representative. They don't really place an emphasis on who is in their sample. So that bit in red is the key element there. Just give you a moment, perhaps just to pause the video and write down a definition of what a case study is. Right. So when should you use a case study? So I would get a few of these points down as well for task two. So why you might use a case study. So generally case studies are used when you have limited examples, because you are studying such a niche and specific social world or a certain sample, certain group, there's not always going to be a lot of research on that given topic. So it is often the case that you have to resort to other studies that have been published before. So let's say you're trying to take a Marxist stance on education in Kent. It might be that there isn't many studies on capitalism and its relationship to education in Kent. It might be that you have to look in the southeast, or equally, it might be you're trying to look at gang representation in the southwest of London. You might only be able to get a study on gang representation in London as a whole, not specific enough, or maybe in the east of London. So you often need studies because there isn't a lot of research in your chosen area. They're also important because you're trying to get that understanding of that social world. So you're looking for something that's in a lot of depth, a lot of detail. And like we said before, it's really something you resort to when you're trying to focus on a specific social relationship. So something that doesn't get researched a lot. It's something that is not artificial, it's real world. So very much some of these interpretivist traits, but they can also be used to support a theoretical stance or as triangulation to actually support your own study. So it might be that you initially do a questionnaire and then you back that questionnaire up with some case studies. So just give you a moment or two just to write those down. Right, so the final bit, it's not a particularly long PowerPoint. So some of the strengths and weaknesses of the case study approach, you might want to get some of these down. So the strengths, it's able to deal with complex social topics of research by tailoring the research. So what that means is you're able to essentially pick and choose your case studies based on what you're trying to do. You're trying to essentially target your information where you're getting it from, specific to you. Like we said already, it's good for triangulation. Because it generally takes a interpretivist or qualitative approach, it generally is rich in validity, so rich in detail. It's a grounded theory approach as well, or it can be. So that essentially just means you're not guided by aims or a particular hypothesis. You're going in, just checking things out without any prior knowledge or predictions. Some of the weaknesses. Because it's got an interpretivist approach, it's generally not very generalizable, meaning not very representative. So it's not really something that you can apply to the wider population. And it's also something that's not easy to repeat, so it's lacking reliability. Sometimes they can be unethical if observations are based without consent. And again, another specific critique of observations that applies to case studies as well. You can get observer effect, so where people change their behavior for your research. But also, and it's really one of the key ones, is there's this issue of access. Like we said, you're looking at something so niche, so specific, that you're going to have some difficulties there.